WNZK has available a few good hours of airtime for a few good programs to serve their communities. Radio is better than ever in targeting an audience that listens to what you say. Learn more about this exciting radio broadcasting opportunity by calling WNZK Radio at 248-557-3500. Call now. We are WNZK, Dearborn Heights, Detroit, your ethnic superstation at 690 days, 680 nights.
أهلا بكل الذين ينضموا للاستماع إلى راديو بلدي أول راديو عربي أمريكي ويعنى بقضايا العرب في المهجر. برامجنا في راديو بلدي كل يوم جمعة من 8 وحتى 9 صباحا مع ليلى الحسيني في بث حي ومباشر عبر WNZK راديو 690 AM. صباح الخير بلدي، صباح الخير لكل مستمعينا.
Welcome to Radio Baladi, the first Arab, Middle Eastern, and American simulcast radio show. Radio Baladi is broadcast every Friday morning on WNZK 690 AM from 8 until 9 Eastern Time on Good Morning Michigan with Layla Al-Husseini. Our call-in number 248-557-3300. And now, stay tuned for the best radio talk show on Arab and American issues with your host, Layla Al-Husseini.
Today's show is brought to you by Dish Network.
Arabi.
That's what I said.
Arabi.
Baba. Forget it. Watch مسلسل.
Save 40% for 12 months on the Arabi deal from Dish. Get your favorite Arabic channels for $24.99 a month. Call 1-888-926-1455 and use the code offer SAVE BIG. That's 1-888-926-1455. Dish. Your culture at home.
Arabi.
Limited time offer. Requires subscription to qualifying American or Dish Latino programming. Other restrictions apply.
This is Dr. Sahar Khamis. Join me on the third Friday of each month at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll be discussing some of the most important current political, economic, and social issues in my program, The Bridge. On Radio Baladi, on America's Voice of the Arab, WNZK 690 AM and wdmv 700 AM. Good morning, everybody, and welcome. This is your host, Dr. Sahar Khamis, Associate Professor in the Department of Communication at the University of Maryland and an expert on Arab and Muslim media. We are discussing today countering Islamophobia, supportive voices, and remarkable efforts. This is part 2 of this important series, which we have started last month. As we witness an unprecedented wave of loud, vicious, and dangerous Islamophobia in some American media and from some political candidates and public figures in the U.S. today, there is an increasing fear among American Muslims from the dire consequences of this hate speech and damaging rhetoric, which already resulted in several hate crimes and attacks on individual Muslims, mosques, and communities. However, there have been sincere efforts exerted by several individuals, groups, interfaith leaders, community activists, and public officials to counter this damaging phenomena and to overcome its destructive ramifications. Therefore, it's important to shed light on some of these supportive voices and to highlight their remarkable efforts. With me this morning discussing this important topic are two guests who are highly involved in representing the Muslim community in the U.S. and making sure their voices are heard. Mr. Hamza Khan and Ms. Cochran. Mr. Hamza Khan is a political strategist who has advised numerous Democratic candidates and elected officials. In 2014, he was the outreach director for Congressman John Delaney's re-election campaign in Maryland. Currently, he is fundraising consultant for a major presidential candidate and is the president of the Montgomery County Democratic Club, the Muslim Democratic Club of Montgomery County. Montgomery County is home to 100,000 Muslims coming from different countries, 90 countries around the world, and speaking over 35 languages. Hamza Khan is also a former candidate for state office and was awarded by Governor Martin O'Malley, the former governor of Maryland, for his decade-long service in building interfaith relations between Muslims and Jews in Montgomery County, Maryland. My second guest, Ms. Sahar Cochran, is a foreign policy specialist with experience in international and intergroup conflict management and transformation, where her focus is on digital public engagement strategies and tools for addressing conflict, especially in the Middle East and South Asia. Her expertise includes post-conflict democracy and governance, economic and civil society development, extremism and radicalization, media literacy, pluralism, transitional and restorative justice, and minority representation. Sahar began her career as a freelance broadcast journalist covering regional conflict in the Middle East and South Asia at the State Department, where she was also able to advise on many issues using her fluency in Urdu and Arabic for this purpose. Welcome to the show this morning, and thank you for being my guests.
Thank you, Sahar.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that the U.S. has witnessed three very strong waves of Islamophobia. The first one was after the Iran hostage crisis, and the second one was after September 11th. And the third one is what we're witnessing currently now after the Paris attacks and the attacks in San Bernardino in California. It seems to me that this third wave of Islamophobia seems to be by far the worst and the most vicious. I would like to start with Hamza and see if you agree with me on this point, and if so, why is this the case?
Well, first of all, I have to say thank you again, Sahar, for inviting me to be on your show this morning. This is an absolutely a true honor, really. I've known you for many years, and I did not know you had a radio show until lately, so this is exciting.
Thank you. Now you can start following my radio show.
So the first thing is that, yes, this is definitely the most continuous and most vicious cycle, as you put it, of Islamophobia and anti-Islamic rhetoric and anti-Arab rhetoric in the United States for quite some time. And the reason is because there has been a sustained effort by an industry that is built up around Islamophobia to attack the Islamic faith over the last decade or so. And because of this industry's influence and its ability to really inculcate itself all over the United States and build a strong network of hate speakers throughout the country, we've seen a sustained effort to convince Americans that the Islamic faith and Muslim Americans and Arab Americans are somehow a threat to the United States. And because of that extensive effort over the past decade, we've had the results that we've seen lately, where a lot of Americans do feel afraid and feel worried about the presence of Islam in the United States.
Right, and Sarah, you agreed with us that this is the third most dangerous and most vicious wave of Islamophobia that the U.S. has witnessed, and you agree with Hamza on the reasons why this could be the case.
Again, thanks for having me on.
Thank you.
I do see a slight difference in the sources for why this seems more exacerbated this third time round. And for me, the two reasons are that American ignorance about Muslims and Arabs still continues today. And Americans are largely very friendly, open-hearted people. And I believe that if they had a chance to get to know a Muslim or an Arab, their views would be very different. So I think the media plays on those fears and the ignorance that does exist. The other thing is I don't think we've done a great job, both as Muslims and even the United States and its foreign policy of dealing with the issues in the Middle East. They've actually become a lot worse right now with all the things that are happening in Syria and Libya and other places. So I think that my two views on this is that there's a huge amount of ignorance about Arabs and Muslims that still exists. And then the other thing is things in the Middle East have not really improved that much. They've become more complicated.
Right. If I hear you correctly, Sarah, there are 3 points, very important points that you actually raised. Ignorance, and also the media representation, or I should say misrepresentation, in this case, and also the reality, what is actually happening in the Middle East, the very difficult times that this region is going through, and of course the rise in extremism and radicalization, which is overblown many times and focused upon in a very exaggerated way in Western media, as if the 1.6 billion Muslims are all quote-unquote Al-Qaeda or ISIS. If we come to the first point about ignorance, Hamza, what could be done in order to raise awareness? And when I say raise awareness, I mean a two-way street. In other words, the awareness of Americans or the West about Islam and Muslims and Arabs on one hand, and also the awareness of Muslims and Arabs about Western people and Western culture in a better way.
So the first thing to realize is that within the United States, we're not even sure how many Muslims actually live here. There are estimates from anywhere from 2.5 million to 12 million Muslims in the United States, and I kind of go in the middle with 6. And I'm not sure where Sarah falls in terms of guessing how many we are. But if you think about it, 6 million people out of a country of 310 million to 320 million is a very small percentage. It's around 2%. And so the Muslim community, first of all, is a tiny, tiny group. So for us to go out and build relationships with the entire U.S. Population is going to be incredibly hard. And then also looking demographically at where we live, we tend to live on the coast. We tend to live in the same counties and the same districts as Jewish Americans. We really closely mimic their patterns of movement because we have similar concerns and similar jobs and similar socioeconomic backgrounds. And so the real issue has become that America has become incredibly divided between blue and red states, and particularly in red states in the United States, Muslims have very poor representation, and they have very poor rapport with their neighbors. For instance, there have been Muslims living in the state of Wyoming since 1960, apparently, and just earlier this year, protests began at the first mosque built in one, I think, around Cheyenne. If I'm not mistaken, and if I am mistaken, I'm sorry, which is, they've had a large community there for quite a while, and yet it's become a problem suddenly. And this comes down to the fact that in red states there is a very strong Islamophobia industry that's in place and funded very well by certain players. So for Muslims to get involved in those areas and build relationships will be incredibly hard. What can be done is that there are organizations already in play throughout the U.S. that are countering the Islamophobia narrative. For instance, Sarah and I both are strong supporters of something called Emerge USA. And Emerge USA focuses on empowering Muslim Americans through the political process to become active in their societies and help educate everyday Americans about what the Islamic faith teaches and also what Muslims stand for as everyday Americans. Another organization that's doing something similar is the Muslim Public Affairs Council, which is based in Washington, D.C., and is very active, particularly in social media, and spreading the word about what Islam strongly supports and whatnot. So what Muslim Americans can first and foremost do is support organizations that are countering the Islamophobia narrative, the Islamophobic narrative that we're seeing across the country, and in particular Emerge USA and also the Muslim Public Affairs Council.
Right. Sarah, before we go to our commercial break in 2 minutes, I want you to elaborate a little bit more on the Emerge program. I'm particularly interested in finding out more about how this program actually started and the most important goals it's trying to achieve.
Okay, well, before I get into that, I just want to say that I agree with Hamza that forced civic engagement is one of the issues that American Muslims do have, but it's also a normal growing pain because we are largely immigrants, still arriving in this country, learning how to just assimilate and get used to how the system works. And Muslims are not an exception to the marginalization that's going on nationwide by certain forces. They're actually a lot of minorities are subject to that at the moment. And what we don't realize is that media in the last 20 years has changed in a fantastically big way. We have multi-directional messaging, mass communication in ways that was never possible before. And so journalism has changed. So it makes the problems in the Middle East look kind of very difficult to decipher. Everybody is an individual citizen journalist, and so traditional journalism is no longer what it used to be. So we have to note that whatever we see, our perceptions and our storytelling has changed in the last 20 years. So it may seem like this third wave of Islamophobia is very great, but in some ways it's just us navigating a new media landscape. And as for Emerge USA, we actually work on educating Muslims about how to get more civically engaged in the political process. We train youth in leadership skills, and we also push people out to go and vote. So those are our three concentrations right now.
So raising political awareness and also at the same time civic engagement and involvement in the wider community to make Muslim Americans more involved and also more visible socially, culturally, and politically. Excellent. And we will come back to this important conversation right after this commercial break. Stay tuned, please.
Ziyad brand. Quality products from our family to yours. Ziyad Brothers Importing offers the finest quality products, including brands like Sultan, Kraft, Nestle, Hook, Rico Picon, Donna, and many more. Ask your retailer to carry these fine products because you deserve the very best. For more information, visit our website at www.ziyad.com. That's www.ziyad.com. Ziyad, quality products from our family to yours.
40 No, 40 Pronounce the عين بابا. What مسلسل بابا?
Save 40% for 12 months on the Arabic deal from Dish. Get your favorite Arabic channels for $24.99 a month. Call 1-888-926-1455 and use the code offer SAVE BIG. That's 1-888-926-1455. Dish, your culture at home.
Arabi.
Limited time offer. Requires subscription to qualifying American or Dish Latino programming. Other restrictions apply.
Life for Relief and Development is a nonprofit charity that has been providing humanitarian aid and development to people and communities regardless of race, color, religion, or cultural background for over 22 years. When disaster occurs here or around the world, Life rushes to provide food, medical aid, and shelter to those in need. Life also has development projects to provide medical relief, water purification, educational programs, relief for orphans, and much more. Your help and support can greatly improve these efforts. All donations are tax deductible. For more information, please visit our website at lifeusa.org or call 248-424-7493. That's lifeusa.org, 248-424-7493.
This is Dr. Sahar Khamis. Join me on the third Friday of each month at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll be discussing some of the most important current political, economic, and social issues in my program, The Bridge. On Radio Baladi, on America's Voice of the Arab, WNZK 690 AM, and wdmv 700 AM. Welcome back to the show, everybody. This is your host, Dr. Sahar Khamis. We are discussing today part 2 of Countering Islamophobia, Supportive Voices and Remarkable Efforts. And with me this morning discussing this important topic are Mr. Hamza Khan and Ms. Sahar Cochran, two visible voices supporting American Muslims and helping them to navigate this difficult process of countering Islamophobia. Sarah, before going to the commercial break, we were talking about the raising of awareness and also better representation of American Muslims. It seems to me that for a long time, we Arabs and Muslims have been talking to ourselves rather than talking to the outside world, and not really very skilled in terms of better representing ourselves and our own stories. And I agree with you that we need to have alternative media, alternative voices, and alternative narratives to counter this wave of Islamophobia. Can you please comment a little bit as a journalist and a media expert yourself on how this could be best done?
Well, first of all, I also serve as the Virginia director for Emerge USA. And the problem that I see is the older generation that lives in the U.S. of Muslims and Arabs and South Asians as well tend to be more concerned with how they can make a living, establish themselves in the country. And then the younger generation is very much like the rest of American youth, which is kind of apathetic towards the political system. So the challenge for us is, in Virginia as well as other states, is to get these two generations together and make them understand that part of your growth is going to be understanding that this is now your country, that while you understand the issues that are going on in your native countries where you came from, you are now an American, and you have to own that. And you have to actually get involved in everything that is American. A lot of people have an attitude that somehow they will go back to their native countries or only here for economic reasons, but civic engagement involves you being involved in the social fabric and the political fabric of this country. So at Emerge, we push people out to understand that it's really important to have your voices heard, not just in general elections for presidents, but also especially at local levels where you can influence your education system, your road systems, your security situations with the police, and being able to make sure your neighborhood, you are informed about who your local district representatives are and who your municipal representatives are. And this is where our populations are very weak, and our job is to go out and educate people about how to get the resources to find out who their representatives are, how to affect policy and legislation and make changes in their immediate surroundings rather than jumping onto the boat for larger elections only.
Excellent. And Hamza Khan, you mentioned the Muslim Public Affairs Council as another organization which actually tries to enhance Muslim Americans' participation in the political process and at the community at large. Can you please comment a little bit more on what this organization is all about and what it's really trying to achieve?
Well, unfortunately, I can't comment too much more on what this organization is about since I'm not actually a staff member for them, and I don't want to misspeak for the Muslim Public Affairs Council. But I can tell you that we were originally founded in Southern California, where there is a very large Muslim population, an Arab American population. And since then, MPAC has opened a field office in Washington, D.C., and earlier this year they held their second annual elections forum, where Sarah and I both got to speak about the important work that Emerge is doing to empower the Muslim community nationwide. That being said, the Muslim Public Affairs Council has focused on the past couple of years on building relationships directly with legislators and assisting in creating a public policy platform that protects Muslim interests domestically and abroad. Now, remember, Muslims happen to hail from every country in the world, and we are a majority in at least 40 countries. So it's kind of hard for MPAC to decide what are Muslim priorities when it comes to foreign policy. But they have been very effective in creating a domestic policy front for the Muslim community and building those relationships with the right people at Homeland Security, at the Justice Department, and in Congress and the White House in order to further the Muslim American narrative that we are a part of our society here in the U.S. And we'd love to, we would like to engage more in public service.
Excellent. You're also the president of the Montgomery County Democratic Club, the Muslim Democratic Club of Montgomery County, Maryland. Can you please comment a little on what this club is particularly trying to achieve and how is it trying to counter this vicious wave of Islamophobia that we are witnessing right now?
Well, I'll preface this that I feel like Sarah's going to be rolling her eyes for the next 2 or 3 minutes as I go over how amazing Montgomery County is and how much I love being president of the Muslim Democratic Club in Montgomery County. So Montgomery County is one of the most diverse places in the country. We have citizens from over 95 countries. We have languages spoken that you would not even know existed in the world. And we every week have Islamic services, Friday services of the Sunni, Shia, and Salafi sects taking place in Arabic, Turkish, Bengali, Farsi, Hindustani, which is also called Urdu or Hindi, and French. And that just speaks to the incredible diversity of our community. Oh, and apparently also Wolof, but I don't know where that is in the county. I just know that somewhere in the county we have a service in Wolof, which is a language from West Africa. Essentially, Montgomery County over the past decade and a half has become a hot pot for Muslim American settlement in the United States. We have 100,000 Muslims, which is 10% of our 1 million people who live in Montgomery County. We are the 7th wealthiest county by income and either the 2nd or 3rd wealthiest by assets, I'm told. And this is out of census data, so I'm not just pulling this out of thin air. And what we realized was that over the past decade and a half, the incredible diversity that had come to our area from the Muslim community, we hadn't really started to build relationships with each other as Muslims. and we were having Muslims operate in very independent silos. Oh, and we also have services in Bahasa Indonesian. I should mention that also. We actually have the country's only Indonesian language mosque in Silver Spring, which is very much inside of Montgomery County. And when we realized that our religious community was operating in ethnic silos and that we were not really embracing our ethnic diversity, the younger generation, which here in Montgomery County, counter to what Sarah was talking about as a national trend with Muslim Americans, young people here in Montgomery County are incredibly active in politics. Our Montgomery County Young Democratic Club, for instance, is a premier organization, and nearly every president of that organization has gone on to become an elected official in Montgomery County. And so the young leaders of the Muslim community came together from several different ethnic communities, including the Indonesian, the South Asian, the Arab American, and the Iranian American communities, and decided that we needed to have a voice in Montgomery County politics. There was a defunct organization called the Montgomery County Muslim Council that was operating more or less as a shadow group to protect the wealth interests of certain individuals from the Muslim community, and was not representing the greater diversity of the Muslim community. And so after we saw that they weren't actually executing on that, we decided to create a democratic club that would focus on embracing the Muslim community's greater diversity and empowering Muslim voices to become a part of the political system. We don't have a sister Republican club, and the reason for that is that as of this year, we haven't had a Republican elected for Montgomery County for an entire 10 years. But hopefully in the future, we can build out more relationships with the Republican side of the Muslim community as well. In the meanwhile, we have an all-star team as officers. We have every major ethnic group in the county represented on our board, including South Asians, Afghans, Latinos, African Americans, Turks, Arabs, Persians, you name Indonesians, you name it, we've got it. And we're very proud of that. We are the most diverse population so far in the county overall.
Excellent. And of course, I'm sure this diversity adds to the wealth and richness of this particular part of the Maryland, state in terms of including more voices, more perspectives, and hopefully more involvement among the American Muslim community in Montgomery County and beyond. Sarah, you are also involved in oneblue.org, which is another organization that tries to serve the Muslim American community and also to be involved in the area of conflict resolution and peace building. Can you talk a little bit more about this particular organization and what it's trying to achieve in this realm?
Well, I co-founded oneblue.org about 9 years ago, and I realized that because of the arrival of the Internet and how media has been changing, that Muslims and minorities and just people in general need to be aware of how the different tools that are available in the media to put their stories across. And I think that you cannot address conflict without seeing where the sources of information are coming from and how the stories are told. So what we do at One Blue is 3 areas, basically. I run workshops that take a real-time conflict and people choose the faction they want to simulate in the actual conflict, and they role-play it. And they use the media tools that I provide in the workshop to practice conflict resolution and transformation skills. My partner, Barbara Pepson, she actually does education workshops where she actually goes around the country and indeed around the world to help people develop curriculum around Arabs and Muslims for schools, and she does professional development workshops for teachers to teach about Islam and Arabs. And the third thing that I do is mediation. We help with workforce mediation if there's issues that people have between each other in an office or something. We actually provide services for mediation. So addressing conflict at all these levels is what we do at One Blue.
And it seems to me that all of these are very important aspects that need to be taken into account and indeed implemented even more, especially taking into account the current challenges related to Islamophobia, which are facing the American Muslim community at present. We will come back again to revisit all of these important points right after this commercial break. Stay tuned, please.
Are you going to start a restaurant or a grocery store soon? Do you need floor plans and designs? Call Naji Abood at 734-744-9796. Do you want to buy kitchen and restaurant equipment at discount prices? Call Najee Abood now, 734-744-9796. New Concept Products and Design, the trademark of kitchen equipment. 5% discount on all purchases of $75,000 or more. New Concept Products and Design, new location, 31185 Schoolcraft in Livonia. Learn more at www.newconceptproducts.com. Call Najee Abood, 734-744-9796.
From their first words to first grade, Dreamy Children's Center will help get your child on the right track. The highly qualified staff works closely with parents to provide an experience that goes beyond early education. We can help nurture important personality traits with the use of educational programs ranging from preschooling for infants to Montessori-approved programs and bilingual curriculums for young children. All meals can be provided and we can arrange for after-school pickup. Dreamy Children's Center in Dearborn Heights on Warren, in Westland on Ann Arbor Trail, and in Troy on DeQuinder.
Arabi. Arabi.
That's what I said. Arabi.
Baba. Forget it. Watch مسلسل.
Save 40% for 12 months on the Arabi deal from Dish. Get your favorite Arabic channels for $24.99 a month. Call 1-888-926-1455 and use the code offer SAVE BIG. That's 1-888-926-1455. Dish, your culture at home.
Arabi.
Limited time offer. Requires subscription to qualifying American or Dish Latino programming. Other restrictions apply.
This is Dr. Sahar Khamis. Join me on the third Friday of each month at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll be discussing some of the most important current political, economic, and social issues in my program, The Bridge. On Radio Baladi, on America's Voice of the Arab, WNZK 690 AM and wdmv 700 AM. Welcome back to the show, everybody. This is your host, Dr. Sahar Khamis. We're discussing today part 2 of countering Islamophobia, supportive voices, and remarkable efforts. And with me this morning discussing this important topic are Mr. Hamza Khan and Ms. Sarah Cochran. Right before going to the break, we're talking about some of the most important initiatives that have been started by American Muslims in order to counter this wave of Islamophobia and to better involve and educate the American Muslim community. Sarah, if I was to talk to you a little bit more about social media. You mentioned before that the third wave may not be necessarily the worst one, but it has been blown out of proportion because of the use of social media, which amplified some of the negative misrepresentations and stereotypes about Arabs and Muslims beyond the usual or the average. In other words, exaggerated some of the negative phenomena like ISIS and Al-Qaeda and others. Can we talk about this social media as a double-edged sword? In other words, on one hand, it can become a wonderful asset that can provide a venue for alternative Muslim voices, and on the other hand, can very much be used as a tool to blow things out of proportion and to misrepresent their image. And if so, what could be done in order to better use social media to present our own alternative narrative?
That's a great question, actually. If you're as old as me, then you've actually seen how media has morphed in the last 20 years. It's gone from unidirectional messaging that you would watch on television, broadcast TV, cable networks, to multi-directional and mass. You can send a message out and it can reach thousands and thousands of people in a matter of seconds. Now, this makes the individual very powerful. It gives everybody the ability to be a citizen journalist, take a picture, write a story about it, and start a movement around it. So what's changed here is that journalism is not what it used to be. And I think, like you said, it is a double-edged sword. It allows people to band together around a concept that they feel is important, whether or not it's based in any reality, and, you know, kind of put that out there to gain support. And we've seen that happen even in these political campaigns that are that we're going through for the presidential elections. And then it can also be used for great causes, you know. It can be used to raise money for great causes. It can get attention to human rights and all kinds of abuses around the world. So I think what we're going through right now is navigating these uncharted waters of how do we handle the social and political atmospheres that we all exist in using the tools in the most constructive way. And that's one of the things that we try to do at Emerge USA and also at One Blue is to make sure that our messaging brings people together rather than creates divisions. Because at the end of the day, we're not fundamentally different from each other. And I think Americans in general, when they find out the similarities between, say, Islam and the Judeo-Christian traditions, they won't be so afraid of Arabs and Muslims in general. So, yeah, I think you bring up an excellent point, and I think that's part of what's going on here, but a lot of the times people don't realize it.
And also we have to bear in mind a very important point. 70% of the population in the Muslim world today are under the age of 30 or 35 years old, which means that we have a growing young population, and many of these are technologically savvy, and they are on the internet almost 24/7 on cell phone devices, on computers, you name it. How can we tap into this in a more effective way with the young people in particular? For example, Emerge and One Blue, do you have a particular strategy to engage youth in particular using the social media potential?
Well, at Emerge, what we do is when we have our programs, we make a concerted effort to put it out in social media. We team up with partners who are very heavy on social media because we know that's where the youth are concentrated. If you want to look at the example of what happened in Egypt with the Arab Spring, I mean, it's all very nice for the youth to use the tools of YouTube and Facebook and Twitter to gather support to pull down a government. But the question remains, what happens once you pull the government down? Do you know what democracy is? Where do you go from there? So at Emerge, our main thing is, being able to network with people, create partnerships between people and between Emerge and other organizations to get people out to understand the importance of civic engagement.
Very important, and I really wish you best of luck with this very important work, and I'd be more than happy to offer a helping hand in this important effort and initiative. And Hamza, I want to talk to you about your upcoming events, with the Muslim Democratic Club of Montgomery County and other organizations and efforts that you are involved with. What upcoming events are you involved in the realm of countering Islamophobia and also enhancing better representation for American Muslims?
Well, thank you for asking that. The Muslim Democratic Club of Montgomery County is going to have on March 19th of this coming year, an event tackling Islamophobia with an all-star panel that, interestingly enough, features you, Sahar. And Rashad Ali of Al Jazeera America, Rabia Chaudhry of Safe Nations Collaborative and the New America Foundation, and Shahid Amanullah, formerly of the State Department and now at Athanas Labs, to talk about the Islamophobia industry, its damage in the United States, and what the Muslim American community can do with the help of grassroots activists and established political players at the state and national level to combat Islamophobia's rise in political circles. It's going to be a very exciting event. The audience is actually not focused towards Muslims. This time we're focusing on non-Muslim legislative aides, political activists, grassroots activists, and elected officials, because those are the people we really want to reach with the message of how damaging Islamophobia has been, even here in Montgomery County and everywhere else in the country, and also offer them some policy solutions to what they can do to tackle the threat of Islamophobia. And I also want to throw out really quickly that Montgomery County has established something called the Montgomery County Model, which is a nationwide recognized model that focuses on building direct relationships between government officials and community leaders in order to facilitate a public-private partnership that promotes social cohesion and public safety. And this was spearheaded by our very own Dr. Hedi Amir Ahmadi of the World Organization for Research and Development, who works here in Montgomery County with government officials to build relationships directly between Muslim American leaders, community leaders, and all the ethnic communities we talked about before in Montgomery County, and with government officials, particularly the police department, the Department of Justice, and other authority entities in order to help establish a healthy rapport and avoid ugly situations in the future.
Excellent. In fact, you read my mind, because I was going to ask you about this particular point about the Montgomery County model. So you actually read my mind, Hamza, which is very interesting. I wanted you to talk a little bit more about why this model is particularly unique, especially when it comes to community engagement and also community policing and reaching out to different factions and different sects of society and involving American Muslims in a more productive and effective way.
Well, for that, I would strongly urge you to have Hediya Mirhamadi on your show, since she's the expert in this. But if I could speak on behalf of Hediya for a moment and of the great work at Word, I would probably say that the approach is much closer in line to what Sarah has been advocating for, which is for Muslim Americans to come out of their shell and build direct relationships with those in power and those who we elect to govern us. And what I mean by that is that in the past, particularly some organizations within the Muslim community have found it to be politically and financially advantageous to show government, to illustrate government forces as enemies of the Muslim community and to demonize them as much as possible in order to get the highest return in fundraising. What the Montgomery County model focuses instead of, rather than winning the short demagogic battle against government, of trying to make Muslim Americans understand that local government can be their ally and should be their ally, and that there should be a direct line of communication with local government as much as and national and state government as much as possible, in order for Muslims to understand government priorities and for the governments to understand what exactly makes Muslims feel uncomfortable with government surveillance and government policies that can come in and feel a bit invasive and distract Muslim Americans from understanding that government is actually elected for and by the people in the U.S. rather than the other way in foreign countries.
Mm-hmm. These are all very important points, and I did have Dr. Hediya Mirhamadi before as a guest on my show, and I will definitely have her again on the show to talk more about this unique Montgomery County model and why it is very important and much needed, especially now. I'm told that we have Layla Al-Husseini. Actually, she is the founder of US Arab Radio, a good friend and colleague online, and that she would like to make a comment. Layla, good morning.
Good morning, Dr. Khamis, and really I'm enjoying listening to you and to your distinguished guests. It's a very important program, discussion, and raised so many great points here. And if I may ask your distinguished guests do they think that the Muslim in America really doing enough effort to change some of the bad image through by media? Some biased media, let me not generalize. So what we can do to change those images, how can we reach really to the majority of the Americans, starting with such a great program like you, Dr. Khamis, and what we can do to maybe change the images is really unclear, it's sometimes biased and unfair. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Layla, and I think your effort in starting US Arab Radio as the first Arab American radio station in the US and Canada is definitely a right step in the right direction, for sure. We would just like to see more of these great initiatives. And Sarah, if you would comment on this, give us your thoughts on this quickly before we go to a commercial break, that would be great, please.
I think the best way for American Muslims to combat what's being said in the media is to start getting involved at a grassroots level in what's happening around them and find themselves being represented within their local governments and make sure that they're able to make those relationships and connections that are important to have support. The other thing is we in Virginia are a very sophisticated bunch of Muslims. We've been civically engaged for at least 30 years, and I have been going out teaching Virginians the importance of Virginia as a swing state that's going to be pivotal in this election for the president, because we happen to be concentrated around the U.S. in major metropolitan cities, and so American Muslims have the power to influence elections because they happen to be concentrated in these cities, and so Virginia is going to be an important state. So I think being civically engaged in the political process and even in the social fabric at local levels will change those media narratives over the long run. It'll take time. We have to be patient and persistent, but it is our civic duty as Muslims to be involved in the government that we live in. So that's something we have to educate our populations about.
Yeah, it seems to me education, better awareness, involvement are very important keys here, as well as bringing in the youth. Hamza, you want to make a comment in 1 minute before we go to the break?
Sure, I couldn't have put it better than Sarah. I really have to praise her. And Sarah has really been the heart and soul of Emerge in Virginia, bringing it to the forefront. The other thing I would add in is that in addition to engaging local government, is that we have to run for office. One of the most important things that we can do is build ourselves up to become a powerful political force in this upcoming election and focus on getting out the vote nationwide, and also on top of that, making sure that we have Muslim candidates on the ballot. In the coming weeks, we're going to have deadlines for applying to become delegates to the Democratic National Convention and the Republican National Convention. In states where we have high Muslim populations and high Arab American populations, we need to go out and register in our state capitals to be on the ballot to represent, in order to send the message that we are arriving as a political group in the United States.
This is a very important point, Hamza, about political representation and involvement. Running for office is indeed an important direction that American Muslims have to also explore and get involved in even more. We will revisit this important topic right after this commercial break. Stay tuned, please.
أسواق زمزم الواقع على 24065 أورشد لك في مدينة فارمington هيلز ترحب بالجالية العربية والكلدانية. تنزيلات كبيرة على عموم المواد الغذائية في يوم الأربعاء من كل أسبوع. لا تنسوا فريش كاري اوت، جميع انواع المعجنات، وايضا صواني الكمبو المشكله والصمون الحار. لحوم حلال الجاليه العربيه والاسلاميه، الملحمه باداره قصاب الجاليه المعروف سلوان جربوع. زوروهم على 24065 اورشد لك في مدينه فارمington هيلز، او اتصلوا بهم على 248-476-0300. اسواق زمزم للمذاق عنوان لجميع طلباتكم، اتصلوا على 248-476-0300. اسواق زمزم للمعامله الراقية وكرم الضيافة عنوان.
مسافر وحدك وفايتني.
أمتي ترافل للسياحة والسفر بإدارة نبيل الباشا تعلن عن افتتاح مكتبها الواقع على 28695 راين رود في مدينة وورن. خدمات متميزة وخبرة تفوق 20 عاما نضعها في خدمة عملائنا الكرام. مع أمتي ترافل يمكنكم حجز رحلاتكم الجوية داخل أمريكا، الوطن العربي وأنحاء العالم، إضافة إلى الأماكن السياحية والاستجمام. للحصول على أفضل العروض وأنسب الأسعار ولمزيد من المعلومات اتصلوا على الرقم 586-578-9126 586-578-9126. أمتي ترافل، عنوان للصداقة والثقة. قشات ميديترينيان ماركت بإدارة سهر قشات وأولاده يرحبون بالجالية العربية والكلدانية. جميع أنواع المواد الغذائية، ألبان طازجة، الكرزات والبهارات الطازجة. داخل الأسواق مطعم ميديترينيان شيش كباب يقدم يوميا جميع أنواع الكباب، المقبلات العربية العراقية وصواني الكامبو المميزة. تفتح الأسواق من 8 إلى 9 مساء من الاثنين وحتى السبت، ومن 8 صباحا إلى 9 مساء يوم الأحد. تقع الأسواق على 32839 نورث ويسترن هايواي في مدينة فارمington هيلز. لحوم حلال للجالية الإسلامية، لطلباتكم من المطعم كول 248-538-7855. that is 248-538-7855. قشة ميديترينيان ماركت، خدمة متميزة ومعاملة راقية.
This is Dr. Sahar Khamis. Join me on the third Friday of each month at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll be discussing some of the most important current political, economic, and social issues in my program, The Bridge. On Radio Baladi, on America's Voice of the Arab, WNZK 690 AM and wdmv 700 AM. Welcome back to the show, everybody. This is your host, Dr. Sahar Khamis, and we are discussing part 2 of Countering Islamophobia, Supportive Voices and Remarkable Efforts. And with me this morning discussing this important topic are two guests who are very visibly active in supporting the American Muslim community and making sure their voices are heard, Mr. Hamza Khan and Ms. Sarah Cochran. Sarah, if I want to just talk to you a little bit more about media part, that's really interesting to me, and I think it's very important for everyone to know more about. Are you also involved in any type of media training for young people, for example, through Emerge or through OneBlue or other initiatives that you are involved with in terms of preparing a future generation of American Muslims who are better able to use the media tools, especially social media?
Yeah, actually, one of the bases of our functioning at OneBlue is using media tools. So we're always teaching people, whether they're Muslim or not, how to be using media tools. So OneBlue is more kind of focused on everybody. It's not just for Muslims. At Emerge, we obviously are trying to use positive messaging. We do have an aspect that I do in our civics training program where I teach people to understand where their messaging is coming from. It's called, we focus on something called media literacy, which is trying to understand the source of your information, how to tackle questions, and how to be professional in the media, how to respond to things, because, you know, Muslims are in the spotlight. I've also been asked about 2 weeks ago by the Fairfax Institute in Virginia to do a 10-hour course on media literacy for a group of 15 students. So yes, there's a lot of training involved because it's not just Muslims, but you know, a lot of minority groups and a lot of groups in general are trying to navigate new media landscapes and how to best use them to for good purposes.
Excellent. It seems like me and you and Laila have to get together very soon to have a very serious discussion about media training and media literacy, and hopefully building even more robust and more visible initiatives for American Muslims and to make sure their voices are better heard.
Absolutely.
And Hamza, I also want to raise an important point. There has been an attitude, unfortunately, among the American Muslim community when things go the wrong way or when negative events happen, like, you know, bigotry or hatred or even attacks on certain mosques or communities, to sweep things under the rug. Let's not have, in their own words, quote-unquote, negative publicity. We don't want to talk about a mosque that has been attacked or a group of bigots who showed up in front of a certain anti-Muslim, chants or slogans or hate speech. This attitude has been persistent for a long time, unfortunately, and in my opinion, it's very detrimental and needs to be changed. Why is there this kind of attitude among some of the American Muslim circles, and what could be done to counter it?
So we have to understand the Muslim American community is very diverse, and what you're speaking about is usually a trend amongst immigrant Muslim Americans. 45% of Americans Muslim Americans hail from African American backgrounds and have been in this country for 200 years or longer. And we don't have that culture of let's hide this, let's sweep this under the rug as much in the African American Muslim community. Mainly because they understand that to live in American society, one needs to be willing to go public with embarrassing things and to talk about issues in order to solve them. Muslims from foreign countries, largely from immigrant countries in the Middle East, for instance, and South Asia, we hail from cultures that teach us it's a bad idea to air our dirty laundry in public and to admit something shameful or hurtful has happened.
Very true.
That negative publicity idea is really built into those cultures. And to deprogram that cultural identity issue of we are South Asians, we are Middle Easterners, and this is our way, is going to take a bit of time and a bit of generational change. And I'm very proud to be leading that change in Montgomery County, removing the old guard, largely of South Asian background, that has kept the Muslim community here in the dark for so long on how to be actively engaged in our population, in their greater population and our greater society. And Sarah has been leading the same effort in Virginia, particularly in Northern Virginia, to help bring Muslim American young leadership into the foray of public service and into public the public eye. And I think she's doing a great job of that at Emerge. And I know that here in Montgomery County, we're doing a great job with the Muslim Democratic Club for that.
Excellent. So it seems to be there's a need for a change of mindset and also a generational issue and a cultural issue. Sarah, you want to comment more on this aspect and what can be done about it?
Absolutely. I was actually going to do that. I wanted to point out that one thing that we could start with is not have a victim mentality when it comes to the media, because that's what they feed off of. These stories feed off of us feeling marginalized and getting defensive and getting upset about it. So getting involved doesn't just mean, like you said, politically and socially, but get involved in the media. Put your story out there yourself, because that's the only time that people are going to turn around and notice you is when you put your own story out.
And put your story out in your own voice and with your own narrative, so that you are defining yourself with your own terms and your own language and your own story, rather than having other people define you and define who you are. I think that's exactly where we need to head as an American Muslim community in order to change the overall narrative and create counter narratives and alternative narratives in our own voice. Sarah, would you like to highlight any important events?
In tandem with that, I think people have to also understand building relationships one-on-one is just as important.
Exactly.
Right, right. So you are really saying, we should have interpersonal face-to-face relations, not just relations on Facebook and Twitter and YouTube. Hamza, you want to comment on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I can tell you, here in Montgomery County, we've built strong relationships with our media outlets in the D.C. and Baltimore area, and that has been incredibly useful over the past decade in helping the Muslim community really become a part of the greater civic action scene. And what I can tell you is that reporters and journalists and their producers are human beings who simply want to have a relationship with a good source for a story. All you have to do is ask them out for coffee, send them an email, introduce yourself as a community leader in the Muslim community or the Arab American community, and just go from there. They're very willing to hear you out. They're very willing not to make you into a demagogue that they can, poke fun at. That's not in their interest. They want a good human story.
Could I mention real... Sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Could I mention real quick, Sahar? You're actually calling me right now where I'm in the capital of Virginia, and I've got a group of students with me, and we're on a leadership program. They were very excited yesterday because I took them to the offices of the future Speaker of the General Assembly of the House, and also met with a delegate called Sam Rasool, who's a Muslim delegate that represents the Roanoke area. He spent an hour and a half with them, and today we're going to get a lecture on advocacy and lobbying, and they're very excited. So creating those relationships is one of the things that we found yesterday was so key. Whether you're Republican or Democrat, Independent, Green Party, whatever you are, create those relationships and get involved, and that's the biggest message that these youth are getting in the last 2 days that we've been at this leadership program here.
Wonderful. And Sarah, in 1 minute, since we're running out of time, we have just like a couple of minutes left in the program. You want to highlight any particular initiatives or events that are coming up soon, either with Emerge or One Blue, that really need to be known and recognized publicly?
Well, One Blue is an ongoing project, but I did want to point out that Emerge USA has done something very different now. We are actually going to be hosting a series of town hall discussions amongst American Muslims and campaigns that are, local and even presidential campaign representatives will be coming to have open discussions with the American Muslim community in Virginia, and it's all setting the stage for the presidential elections that are coming up in November. And so this is a new program, so if people want to tune in, I'm going to make sure there's some sort of a social media presence so you can watch them or stream them, but from now onwards, from February onwards, we'll be doing a series of these town halls with an organization called Make Space, which consists of American Muslim youth, and it's going to be a great forum. It's going to be a great way to make those connections and open dialogue with campaigns, whether it's at a local level or at a national level.
Excellent. I think we covered a lot of ground today. We talked about a lot of important aspects related to this phenomena of better representation of Muslim voices in America and also countering the process of Islamophobia. Hamza Khan and Sarah Cochran, thank you so much for being my guests this morning, and also for all the great work and initiatives and efforts that both of you are clearly involved in supporting and better representing the American Muslim community in the USA. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
And thanks so much to all our listeners this morning. Thank you all so much. Thank you. Take care and goodbye.